Hi, I'm Maren and welcome back to my channel, Maren Makes It. Today I'm here to take you guys through my at-home hair dyeing process, which I use basically to keep my highlights updated. So my natural hair color is a pretty dark brown color, and while I love this natural hair color, I do like having some highlights, especially for summer, that just give my hair a little bit more dimension than just kind of being all brown. This past time I did this was my 5th time doing this at home myself, so in those 5 times, trust me, I've gotten 1, a lot faster at it, and 2, I have learned quite a few lessons along the way. So I'm here to share some of those insights with you guys. I have tried to film this video more than once, which is why you'll see some different bathrooms and some different clothing in some of these shots, because honestly, it's really hard to talk and explain this process while you're like doing it and dyeing your own hair. So I am kind of going to be using a montage of some of those shots, as well as me just talking about it today, having already done my hair this past time. So when I highlight my own hair at home, there's basically 2 phases. So there's going to be the lightening phase, and then there's going to be the toning phase. So if you have dark hair, you're going to pretty much have to have 2 phases in order to get your hair lighter. If you want to have your hair even darker than it already is, you can do that in one step. But in order to get your hair lighter, even if you're planning to like do a color, you have to lighten it first if you have dark hair. So this goes whether you're going for something like bold, like blue highlights or purple highlights or a color, but also if you're going for something like light brown highlights in dark brown hair. You're still going to need to get your hair lighter first to be able to tone those strands to the actual color that you want. Lightening equals bleaching, as far as I can tell. I know bleaching can kind of come with a bad connotation, I feel like, of like really drying out your hair and really being bad for your hair. And like, while those things are true, it also a lot depends on your application technique. Like if you leave the bleach on there for twice as long as you're supposed to and the bottle says, like, yeah, probably it's going to do damage to your hair because you're not using the product the way that it was intended to be used. But if you're using the products the way that they are supposed to be used and picking ones that are appropriate for your hair type, I think that there's nothing really wrong with bleaching your hair. I think it also depends on what you're doing the rest of the time for your hair care. Like, your hair doesn't just get cared for at the salon when you go and get an appointment. Like, what are you doing the months or the weeks in between appointments at the salon? What kind of products are you using? What kind of conditioners are you using? Are you keeping your hair hydrated? Are you going for regular trims to get rid of those dead ends? I think all of this makes a huge difference in how well or how poorly bleach will affect your hair. All this to say is basically don't let the word like bleaching your hair scare you from possibly attempting to do this at home yourself. I was really nervous about that just because it feels like such a strong word, and like, yes, while things can definitely go wrong, there are products that allow you to do this safely. So the products I use for this lightening step are going to be these 2 here. These are the Wella Balayage lightening system here. They are made specifically to be painted into your hair and do that style of highlights, and they are also made to be used without aluminum foil. However, because I live at altitude, and I think also because the climate where I am is like a dry heat, I still end up needing to use aluminum foil so that the product doesn't dry out before it has a chance to really act on my hair, because you're gonna be leaving this on for like 40 minutes. So you can imagine that it can kind of dry out, and you don't want it to be dried out because then the bleach stops working basically. So in my case, I also need aluminum foil as another product to help me with this application. I actually made a whole nother video already talking about the products I use when I'm dyeing my own hair, so I'll link that one down below. This way you can hear a little bit more in depth about the products, and this way I can focus this video more on the technique and the actual process of what I'm doing when I'm dyeing my hair, if that makes sense. So you mix these 2 products together in a 2-to-1 ratio. So the most accurate way to figure this out is to use a kitchen scale for this. You can get one of these on Amazon or probably just the grocery store, honestly, for pretty cheap. I think mine was $9.99. I'll link the one I have down below in the comments so you can see exactly which one I have, but it's basically lasted me for years once I bought it once, and I end up using it for all kinds of random things. Like, for example, I use it for the USPS click and ship so that I can cut the entire line at the post office and mail things without having to have them weigh them out for me. So I think it's a good thing to have around the house anyway. Anyway, so you're going to be mixing these in a 2-to-1 ratio. That's 1 of this to 2 of this. So for example, if you use 10 grams of this, you want to use 20 grams of this. So the total on the scale is going to be 30 grams after that. So a little bit of math, but I know you guys can handle it. Then you're going to use a paintbrush to mix those products together until you get a consistency similar to frosting is what it looks like. For anyone who is a hairdresser or knows developers by number, this is going to be equivalent to a 30 volume developer. So the developer numbers go like 10, 20, 30, 40, and I think you can mix them so you can get in between numbers as well, as far as I understand. And basically this is the amount of lifting of the color that's going to happen due to the developer. So for something like bleaching, you're going to want a 30 or 40 in order to really make sure that you're getting to that lighter blonde color. For something like a 10, that's going to be like in the toning step. The developer we use is actually a 10 developer. So it helps like basically activate the product, but it's not really doing any hair color lifting or lightening on its own. If that just totally confused you guys, then just ignore it. This is a good product. It's equivalent to a 30 volume developer. It says it on the back of the bottle, even though it's just sort of advertised as this general balayage developer mix with lightener, which sometimes it's good to be kind of sketched out when products don't disclose this kind of information, because it's like, how legit are they if they don't know these numbers that hairdressers use or they don't disclose them? However, this product does actually say it on the back. It just doesn't say it in the name. A lot of the time when you look for developers, like if you look at Sally Beauty, like you'll just see a big bottle and it just says like 30 volume developer, as opposed to being like a product name like this. So that's kind of the comparison between those products and these ones. I'm guessing you could use like the general 30 volume developer at Sally Beauty too, but personally, I just feel like these two products were made to work together. Why would I not use them together? So once you've mixed up the bleach, you can now paint it onto the strands of hair where you want your hair to actually be lightened. You want to work quickly though when you do this, because you don't want the product to dry up before it can act on your hair. So you definitely want to go in kind of having a plan, having your hair sectioned out so that you can work as quickly as possible. It's a better idea to do like one section and then mix more bleach than it is to like mix a giant batch and then try to do your whole head, because the drying and the chemical reaction starts once the two products are mixed. So if, let's say I start here, and then by the time I get here, it's been an hour, it's like, okay, well, the bleach on this side has had, first of all, way more time to actually develop in your hair, and also way more time for that chemical reaction to happen like in the jar before you apply it. So now you're applying stuff to this side that's like both weaker and already reacted and starting to dry up, and you're probably gonna leave it on for shorter. So it doesn't really make sense. So I think a better way to do it would be to mix a little bit less, do this section, then mix a little bit more, do this section. That way, every time you're applying the bleach, it's basically freshly mixed bleach, if that makes sense. Where you apply the bleach really depends on what you're trying to go for. So for example, if I were going for an ombre, like I wanted to dye just the tips of my hair, or I did this with my sister, she wanted to do like the tips of her hair purple, but we had to lighten her hair first, then you'd apply it to just the bottom of your hair. If you're going for something like you want to all over change your hair color, then you're going to want to apply this all over. If you are doing something like I am, which is usually kind of updating my highlights in my hair is really long, so they just kind of grow out, but I like to update the roots sometimes, then your technique is obviously going to be different than if you're going for an ombre or one of these other looks. So in terms of actually doing the highlights, I basically do this also in 2 phases. So first I section off the area around the front hairline only and pull the rest of my hair back in a ponytail. So I've already sectioned out my hair. See, this is clipped back, and I've taken these front pieces here. I always do this in 2 parts because I don't know enough about hair to do it in one step process, basically. Then I do some pieces sort of around the front of my face. So like right here, which is the section that is now not sectioned out. And this gives me those highlights that you see when your hair is pulled back. I do end up pulling my hair back quite a bit, whether that's in braids or in a bun. If you've watched any of my other videos, you'll definitely see that I don't really have my hair down that much, especially if it's hot out. And so I like when my hair is kind of pulled back like this, that you can actually see some of the highlights. And so in order to do that, I will just sort of do these pieces separately. You definitely want to be generous in your application of product here. You don't want to skimp, because that's when the hair doesn't get dyed evenly or you end up with weird splotchiness. You want to start applying the product here, not quite at the ends, because the parts of your hair that are going to bleach the fastest are the ends if they're already bleached, and also your roots because of the heat from your scalp. And then you can have this problem occur called hot roots, where the part that's closest to your scalp is actually the most bleached part, which looks really awkward. I've sometimes had this happen to me a little bit, but I've mostly been able to avoid it. This is going to be mostly thanks to many hours of me watching Brad Mondo's channel. If you don't know who he is a hairdresser, he has a YouTube channel, and especially during the pandemic, he was doing a lot of videos on reacting to people dyeing their hair at home. I don't want to laugh because I feel bad because of what happened to some of the people, but then on the other hand, I'm like, but you're putting that out on the internet. Like, you could have had a hair fail happen to you at home and you don't have to broadcast it to the world. So you're kind of opening yourself up for this to happen, I think, a little bit if you're going to make a YouTube video of your bleach fails or your hair fails at home. So I think it's okay to laugh about it a little bit. Anyway, just by watching his commentary, like, first of all, his reactions are hilarious, so you should definitely watch them. But second of all, I learned a lot about what to not do, because he'd be like, oh, this went wrong because of this thing. This went wrong because of this thing. Like, oh, that person shouldn't have chosen those products. Like, he was kind of calling them out as they were making the mistakes. And in that process, you actually learn a lot. So watching those videos was both entertaining to me and really helpful in figuring out this whole process. Anyways, back to hot roots. So what you want to do is you want to start a few inches below the root of your hair, work your way down the strand, and then touch up that top part. The reason for that is that the heat of your scalp can actually make the bleach accelerate the bleaching process. And so what can end up happening is this part might be yellow and then the rest of your hair here is going to be orange, because the heat helped this part bleach your hair faster than this part. And usually, if anything, we have the ends of our hair lighter, or we want that effect, sort of in a balayage or an ombre, as opposed to our roots. Usually people don't ask for let me have the lightest part of my hair here and the darkest part of my hair here. It's usually the other way around. So this looks really awkward when it happens. If you have this happen to you, you can kind of correct it with a root shadow with a toner, but this is getting way more advanced, and honestly, it's easier to avoid the problem than have to color correct later on. So basically, one time I foil around the front like this, and then the other time I split my hair down the middle and then do the foils on the side. This way I end up with highlights when my hair is pulled back into a ponytail and also along the part of my hair. I'm sure there's a way that hairdressers do this to do both of those things at once, but because I'm not a professional, I have no idea how to do that, and I've always gotten good results doing it in 2 stages like this, so I'm gonna keep doing that. Doing this in 2 parts really helps me because while it is a little bit more work, I do feel like it gives me more control. I also don't have to work as quickly, with the whole bleach drying up problem. It just means I have to do an extra step, basically, of blow drying my hair in between. Depending on the length of your hair and how much you wear it down and how much hair you have in terms of volume, you might not do this step. But this is where, that whole thing about, what works for me might not work for you guys kind of comes into the picture, and you have to sort of judge your own hair. Just after taking out the foils of my hair, you can already see that there's some lighter pieces in here, which is a good thing. That means that the hair was lifted. It's easier to work from a place of your hair being blonde than getting to this weird orange level. If you're getting a lot of orange, a lot of brassiness basically in your hair after you're bleaching it, that means that the bleach didn't fully act on your hair. And so there can be different reasons for that. So one could be the product dried out because you didn't have it in foils. One could be that you applied it too long from the actual mixing of the product. Another reason could be just you didn't get enough of it through the hair, so kind of that splotchiness we were talking about. So any of those situations, you can end up with sort of orange highlights as opposed to blonde at this point in the process. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, but again, it really depends on the look you're going for. If you're going for blonde highlights or blonde hair, then getting to orange is not that great, because then what you have to do to get yourself to blonde is now you have to do it all over again. You have to do the bleaching again in order to get your hair more lifted, as they call it, which essentially means more bleached. Now, if you were going for a lighter brown or maybe copper or something, getting to this orange point is not so bad, because you can still really work with that as a lighter base than your natural hair in order to get your desired results. So again, it kind of depends on what the result is that you want. You can see how it's really only the front pieces here, or kind of the ponytail pieces, as I like to call them, around that front hairline that we've dyed at all. I've given this about 40 minutes to develop, and this is what it looks like. So now I'm going to wash out these pieces now, and then I'm going to kind of redo the process, but with my hair in a center part. Got these front pieces washed out now. I'm just waiting for this one to have a little bit more time to develop, because it was looking a little bit orange as opposed to yellowish. I'm going to get these ones to dry before I do the center part, just so that everything is laying correctly. So then once these front pieces are basically taken care of and comfortable with how those ponytail highlights look, then I move on to the highlights that are going to be around my middle part. So then I would part my hair like this, right along the middle, and then I would do the sections right here. And this ensures that when my hair is center parted, that I still look like I have highlights. So this is what my hair looks like after doing the front foil. So you can see that this front part has been lightened already, but this back part hasn't. And it looks really nice now when I pull my hair back because you have all these streaks in here. So to paint on the bleach, I recommend taking small sections like this, basically, and then you're gonna wanna weave your comb through the hair to get some smaller sections. And I'm doing this without a mirror right now, so I have no idea if it looks super stupid, but basically you can kind of keep weaving until you've just sort of picked out some little pieces of hair. And then those ones you're going to want to paint with the bleach, put in aluminum foil, fold it all up, and then kind of tuck it out of the way so that you can work on the next pieces of hair. I think especially around the front of the face, the smaller the sections, the better. So that means that either you have to use a finer tip thing, like I've even used like a needle or like a bamboo skewer type thing so that I can get really fine with my weave. Or it means like you pick out some pieces, you weave it, and then you weave the pieces that you just picked out so that you keep getting smaller and smaller sections. I think especially around the front of the face, these more delicate sections look really nice and look really natural. It kind of gives you like a sun-kissed look. If you keep your weave really big or you're just sort of like pulling out pieces of your hair, you're gonna get basically like that 1990s chunky highlights look, which it's a look, and like if that's the look you're going for, more power to you. But I just want you guys to get the results that you want. So like if you want chunky highlights, you know how to get them and you do it. If you want finer ones though, I don't want you to end up with something that you don't want. Does that make sense? Got it. Okay, let's keep going. Any hair that I'm not currently working on, I'll keep pulled back in a ponytail or in a bun, or I'll, at the very minimum, be clipping it back. I can just pin back any sections or pieces that are already in foil so that I can work with both of my hands and I don't have to worry about holding back any of those pieces of hair. Especially when you're working on yourself, you might have to like move your head more than when you're sitting at the salon and you're just kind of sitting straight up. And that means there's more chance for hair to kind of be moving around or falling into different places that you don't really want it to be. And it's already a little bit more tricky to do this on yourself because you can't really see the side of your head and you're going to be working in a mirror. So I think having these clips is even more essential than like when you're in a salon. And I usually end up using way more clips than like the people use when they do my hair in the salon. Be generous when you apply this bleach to your hair, so you really want to make sure when you're painting it on that you're coating every single strand. This is another reason why having those fine sections is really helpful because it makes it a lot easier to make sure that all the strands are getting coated. If you're painting like this big section right here, that's like a lot of hair to fully make sure it gets covered in bleach. And it can lead to some splotchiness if you don't do a good job getting it all the way through. And what the splotchiness kind of looks like is kind of like almost like stripes sometimes. So it would be like, okay, this part got a lot of bleach. Okay, this part is light, then this part is brown, and then this part is yellow, and then this part is brown. Obviously, okay, it's not quite that harsh usually, but it can look like that. And if you look up like hair like splotchiness or something, or watch some of those videos of Brad Mondos that I've been talking about, you'll see this has happened to people where it's like, oh, clearly they got a big clump of bleach here, and now it looks like they literally have like polka dots almost in their hair. So not the look that I think anybody's going for. So again, we gave these foils up to 40 minutes to develop. Another thing to keep in mind is that virgin hair takes longer to develop than already bleached hair. So if you're like updating your highlights, for example, you might have the case that like this part of your hair is, you know, freshly grown out hair out of your scalp. It's never been dyed. It's your natural color. And then this part of your hair is like already lightened or has some highlights already going on in it. So the already highlighted hair is going to bleach faster than the virgin hair. If you're wondering what I do for the back of my head, it's kind of awkward. It's probably my least favorite part about doing this because my arms get so tired of holding up my hair. But basically I hold up my hair so that I can see it above my head in the mirror, and then I'll just pick a few spots to paint in a few highlights, and I just kind of leave it at that because it's so difficult to work on this part of your head yourself. When you wash out the bleach, you want to take care to make sure you get all the grittiness out of your hair. So the bleach kind of feels like almost like sand mixed into the paste is kind of the texture that it has. You want to make sure that sandiness feeling, that grittiness is gone when you're rinsing out your hair. Just after washing out the bleach, you can already see some lighter pieces here in my hair even before my hair is dry. So this is a pretty good sign. I'm excited. So this brings us to the end of part 1 of my hair dyeing series video here. So this is my final results just after the bleaching. We are still going to tone it. They're not going to stay this light, the highlights, but you can see here that we created contrast in the hair to give us a really good base to tone the hair from. If you're still with me, then you might as well give this video a like. Make sure you're subscribed so that you can see next week when I post part 2 to this hair dyeing series. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Bye, YouTube!